All right, we should be good to go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another Moonshire Monday. Thank you so much for joining me yet again. I'm going to give it a couple minutes for the chat to catch up. I know that it always takes a few minutes, which I should fix that, by the way. I'm thinking about adding a new countdown timer when the stream starts so that everything can catch up, and then everything can everyone can join the chat together. But I see a few people joining already. Thank you so much for the people that are able to see me so far. I see Napster, and I see Abel and Wolf. Man, the chat above my head is very delayed. I'm going to see if I can do something about that sometime soon. But yeah, I'm going to be reading off the one above my head. Future34, Robert, Wolf, Krish, Elias, Drag. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really do appreciate all the support and all of you joining. Today, I was going to be showing off some of the stuff I was working on over the past week, which was mostly regarding cutscenes and encounters. So if I go... Also, the camera needs to be fixed. I redid the camera, too. You started to play Doom Eternal. That sounds awesome. Oh, yeah, I need to read I'm reading the wrong chat. Oh, man, I really wish that the chat above my head was quicker. That's okay. So let's go over here. Elias said I've started to play Doom Eternal. That game is really, really cool. I bought that game when it came out, and I played it on my Steam Deck, and it worked really good. How long have I been developing the game? A very long time. Let's see. I mean, I started posting the Zelda fan game videos on this channel 5 or 6 years ago, and this is kind of based off the same code base. So the stuff I worked on over the weekend is based around this camera and this cutscene. And how these enemies join the fight, which I think is really, really smooth now. There's a really weird bug where the vines are flashing in a really weird way. You're making platformer whilst watching? Awesome! That sounds really cool, Slinky. What do you think? Your profile picture looks awesome. Yeah, that's neat. The cool game controller symbol. Kyle, I found a way to see the code behind the demo of Moonshire. I don't have Discord, but I can explain it to you. Yeah, so at the moment, the code is not really encrypted or bundled in a way that's particularly robust. So it's not hard to extract it. However, in the new version that I'll be posting to Steam, it's going to be 0.5. That version is going to be built using the Lua compiler, so it's going to be a little bit more of a barrier. But the thing about any sort of game in general is that when you put a game out there that's an executable, people are gonna find a way to decompile it, no matter what. I can try to obstruct it however I want. I can make it more difficult, but at the end of the day, people are going to find a way to decompile the code and read what I wrote. There's no getting around that. If people can do that with AAA games, if people can do that with GTA and stuff, then there's not really much I can do. I'm gonna take the steps necessary to make it reasonable. Because right now it's a little bit too easy, so I can take some basic precautions to help with that. Love the game, but the death animation doesn't seem... Yeah, I mean, the death animation is terrible. I'm totally with you. So I made a short on my channel a long time ago that showed off a really good death animation where the player flew up in the air and then landed and then the background shifted. It was really, really cool. But I took it out because it was so hackily made. It did not mesh with the rest of the code base. And that's a feature that's an aspect that a lot of people don't really get about game development, is that the code needs to be clean if you want the game to reach the finish line. Because when you have just all this crappy copy and paste stuff to make things work, in the long run, it just doesn't work out. How do I scale my game / UI when the window? Yeah, that's a good question. So right now the window is able to scale to fit any size, so I could scale it down like this. And you can see that it basically just zooms out the camera, but vertically it still shows the same amount of space. So really it's not zooming at the camera. It's just changing the scale of the whole game. And the whole game is rendered, if I go to probably draw, there's a scale value. Oh wait, no, it would be in game start. So it's all managed through set scale. I should probably put this in a different file. But the set scale gets configured and gets calculated in this function. And then you can see the camera gets zoomed to match that new scale value that matches the window size and the window size and proportions. Banger OSD. Yeah, Wolf, you missed last week's stream. The music bot got fixed. I fixed the music bot. And then today, I log in to mix it up and it's not working again. So I officially have to move on to a different music player. I think what I'm gonna try is a bit more of like a vertical camera to take up a bit more space in my stream window, and then have the music displayed like as a static text display above my head. I'll have to write like a script that can read what song is playing, because that's the thing, is that I was using Mix It Up because it already handled this. It already has the script to figure out what song is playing, but I think I'm gonna have to do something locally. The music bot hates you. You're the issue. Hopefully that's not the case. But yeah, I'm gonna try a different solution next week. Am I so good at art? I mean, I wouldn't say that. Like, I didn't do all of these sprites. I commissioned a lot of these sprites, and all of them come from asset packs, but then I do edit them. So I have my hand in all of these sprites, but I get a lot of help, is the answer. How do I scale the UI is what the question was. Well, so the UI is rendered through the same scale value. So here, in this set scale function, when the scale gets calculated, the scale value gets configured or gets considered when I go to pause.lua. There is a pause set scale. Look, it's a very similar function where it uses the global scale value and it kind of adjusts it a little bit to fit the pause menu, and then it just calculates a new resolution for everything. So that's the way that it handles it, is once the window size changes, it's going to recalculate what that scale value should be, and then once it recalculates that, then it just passes that value throughout the rest of the game. And also there's a bug right now where you can see that the camera zooms out really far when I pause. I think that's because I changed it from an addition to a factor. I just want to make games, but I need a job also. What should I choose to make games in Lua Love or C++? Your CS student. Lua doesn't have many jobs. Well, okay, so this is the way I see game development, is if you're looking for a job, I don't really think that like this indie game space that we're working on, that like I'm showcasing here, where I'm using Love 2D to create an indie game, that's not really a job thing. It's not really like, you wouldn't go out and apply for a job like that. It's similar to like Balatro. Does Balatro have employees? Like the people who made that? Like maybe he commissions people, or maybe he has a small team behind him. But in general, no. Like this indie game space is very different. And same with like game development in general. So your basic question is more like, should you build up skills that are attractive for AAA companies? Because is that what you're wanting? Are you wanting to work at a AAA game development studio? Because if that's the case, then yeah, I would say that you should research what languages and frameworks and engines are they using in the industry. Look at the job openings and see what skills they're asking for. If they're asking for C++ and Raylib, like you're saying, then sure, that's what you should probably use. But if all the job openings are saying Unreal Engine, then you should probably learn Unreal Engine. If your goal is to get a job. But if your goal is to make a game, then you'll take all sorts of different considerations. Because if you ask me which engine is better, Love 2D or Unreal Engine, well, personally, I like using Love 2D a lot more. But if your goal is to get a job in the industry, then I would not necessarily choose Love 2D, because I don't think there's job openings for that. Same with Raylib. I don't really think that that's a high demand, like, job required skill. I think it's more like, do you have the required experience, and do you know how to do the things that we're asking you to do? And like because I commission people a lot to help me with things, with like art specifically. I don't really care what their background is in any of that stuff. I just care, can they make good artwork? And people who are hiring game developers are thinking the same thing. Like it's we make games. Can this person make games? And also, I shouldn't say it's like a complete waste of time to make indie games like mine. It's not. In fact, I would say that my time making indie games made myself more attractive to companies when I was applying for jobs. Because I got a job at Microsoft, and they actually were like, "Oh, you have this Udemy course about like game development. That's really cool." And that was actually a selling point for how I got my job at Microsoft, which is cool. I'm really happy about that. But if you ask me, did like my Lua programming skills get me in the door, I'd say no, not at all. I had Lua on my resume, but that didn't change anything. Unreal is still perfectly valid TBH. The only issues I find for solo dev is using software that is affordable. The rest is just a matter of time and practice. I mean, I would say all of it is time and practice, even using like a canned engine like Unreal Engine. It takes a lot of work. Making a game is really tough. But it's always a tricky conversation when it comes to jobs and game development, because game development as an industry and in terms of like a career, like being an employee at a game development company, I don't know if that's something I would aim for. I would aim for something different. If you want to make games, you should make games. If you want to work at a games company, you should build up skills that might be relevant, but I wouldn't say specifically aim to work at a game company, because just that's not looking too hot right now. I want to be realistic. I would recommend getting a career that earns money while at the same time building up your game development skills in indie games or whatever software you want to make games in. Always do what you love. Always work on things that you want to work on. But also, there is the harsh reality that like we need to make money, and if your passion doesn't make money, you need to do something else that makes money so that you can pursue your passion. I would never tell like a painter or an artist to not paint because painting doesn't make money. I would say you should get an income-based job, something that earns some cash so that you can pay your bills while at the same time you are doing your paintings, building up your skills, and then eventually you'll become so good that people will pay you for your artwork and you won't have to worry about that stuff anymore. And Clair Obscur is amazing. I love Clair Obscur. I finished it like within a couple weeks of it coming out and I loved it so much. I only have a few songs from the OST on my playlist just because a lot of the songs from that game are very high intensity, and this game, or this stream, is meant to be more chill. Also, I have a problem with my posture recently, where I like crane my head up like this. I need to keep my chin back and my neck straight, otherwise I'm gonna get like a hunchback, and I don't want that. I don't want to join AAA game stuff. I want to make indie games, but the only consideration is I can't do that with unemployment. So I guess C++ is the way to go. Yeah, no, don't aim for unemployment. I'm glad that you realized that. So yeah, if you don't want to work in AAA, then you should this is the problem, is that if your goal is to get a career in game development, what that translates to I want to work at a AAA game company, because there's no other really space besides like a few like AA studios, I guess. It's highly competitive to get one of those positions. Essentially, you're signing up to like do AAA games, which is okay. There's lots of people that do that, and there's some really good positions there. But it is really competitive, and I wouldn't say that the compensation is great, and I wouldn't say that you'll enjoy it very much. I think it makes more sense that if you're a CS student or you like are learning to program, learn how to do whatever sort of development is high in demand right now, that there are jobs for. Because if you graduate and you don't have a job, you're not going to be able to make games. But if you graduate and you do have a job, then you can pay your bills and then make games on the side, building up your game development skills until you reach the point that you can make games professionally. But if you try to just jump into game development when you like don't have the money or the skills or the career or the job backing you, like you mentioned unemployment, I don't want anyone to aim for that, because that's a really scary position to be in. So if you're young and you can still course correct, I would say try to build a career that can actually land you a job, even if it's not your dream job. There's no such thing as a dream job. Even these like game development AAA studio game jobs, like people hate those. Like everyone says dream job, it's my dream job to work at X company, but then they get there and it's like, oh well, it turns out the place is toxic, or they overwork you, or there's crunch, or there's layoffs. And then once you get laid off, where are you gonna go? You move to the city to work for X company, and now they laid you off, and now you have to go work somewhere else. I don't want. My goal is for everyone to be able to reach their goals with certainty. But when you try to jump into a career without certainty, where there's a lot of uncertainty and there's no control in what you can do, like you're setting yourself up for a lot of disappointment and failure. I don't want that to happen to people. Currently making a tank at 3D. That sounds awesome. I want to get more into 3D modeling, but not until Moonshire is done. I'm very focused on pixel art at the moment. Okay, so at the moment I'm going to show what I was working on with the cutscenes. So I have 2 cutscene files. I have this cutscene 2. This is the one that I worked on over the past week, and the original one is cutscene. Guys, I'm telling you, this phase of development is really weird and interesting, because I'm making so much progress, but it's like invisible progress that you can't even notice. Where I'm rewriting this cutscene file, and this new one is so much better, and it's cleaner, and it adapts to whatever I want, and it's so much easier to use. I'm so happy with this cutscene file that I rewrote. But at the end of the day, visually, when people are playing the game, it's not going to seem or feel any different. It's going to look the same as it was before. And, you know, people might find that to be a waste of time, but it's better to do this now when the game is still early in development than, you know, wait until I'm super far in, and then course correcting at that point is going to be very difficult. It looks like my camera's lagging. I'm sorry that if the stream lags again, please let me know. I'm really interested in fixing the stream quality. I want to make it as good as humanly possible, and it's gonna involve a lot of testing. My disabilities landed me in a state of constant unemployment. I would hate for any able-bodied person to put themselves in that position because it's really awful for your mental health. That I would say, listen to this person. There are people who have no choice but to use unemployment. That's what it's there for. There are situations that you can't avoid that. So if you can avoid it, you should. So that's really good advice. I know some web dev stuff as well. I guess I should sharpen those skills to get a job and make some games with Love2D on the side. How does that sound? I mean, what you described is literally exactly what I did. What I did is I was super into game development all my life. I was making games when I was a kid. There are YouTube videos that I showed on stream before from when I was like 13 making games, like Zelda fan games. So I'm with you. It's a long time, lifelong passion of mine. But I realized that like getting like a game development degree or trying to get a game development job, that would not be good for my career, because I understood that making money is an important aspect of life. Even if you don't really like it, even if you're like one of those people that say, I like, money's not important to me, I just want to make games, I just want to enjoy life. I completely agree with you. But you'll get that harsh reality when you have to pay your bills. You have to pay your bills with something. And when you don't have any money, like, it makes the whole thing so unfun. So I love that idea of going into web development or whatever sort of development you want to look into. You can become a master of all sorts of different types of development so that you can apply to every single job out there. That's what I would say. Hello, Kyle. I miss you. Hi, Adele. Is your plan for Moonshire to have a main story or be open world with smaller stories? There's going to be a main story. If there's any smaller stories, it's meant to be supplemental to the main one. And it's really hard for me to describe what the plan for this game is while it's in such a early state. I'm eager for people to play this new demo, because the idea behind it is that if I go to the map, it's not displaying because I broke it. I broke the map. But each one of these squares represents a different grid. So like right now I'm in this town grid, and when I walk to the left, I'm in another grid. I'm in like the farm grid. So now that I'm in the farm grid, I was in the town grid, which is right here, but then I move over here. So the world is like this big open grid of different cells, of different maps that you can go visit, and the goal is to like visit them all and explore the world, and it's like giving you extra context to the main story as you explore. I really don't want to like bog anyone down with cutscenes or a bunch of exposition. It's meant to be like a quick, easy exploratory based game. I want people to open up this map and see which cells have I not visited yet, and then try to get there, because sometimes there's going to be obstacles that make it so that you can't get to these cells, and as you explore the game, it's going to open up more and more like a Metroidvania. It's kind of similar to Link's Awakening. That's probably the biggest inspiration for this game, is Link's Awakening, because that game also has like a grid based open map that you explore, and it's very fun filling in that map. It's really fun opening up the map and seeing, I haven't been to the northwest corner yet, I'm gonna see if I can find a way to get there. But then you go up to the northwest corner, and it's like, oh, there's a mountain there, I can't get up there, I'm gonna need something different. And it's cool to like figure out the way to get up to that northwest corner when you've been trying to do that the whole game, but at the mountain, there's the mountain in the way. That's the sort of vibe I want to go with this game, where it's like it teases you with different obstacles and different things. I don't know if I have any examples I can show right now. One of them being like the water, for example. Like it's a cliche that the waterfall has something hidden behind it, but by default you can't swim far enough to reach it. So it's kind of like teasing you that you can swim for a little bit to get across small gaps like that, but it's not enough for you to be able to get to. That is so ugly. I hate that text bubble. I need to fix that. Is the game well optimized? Yeah, I'd say overall it is. I have the FPS displaying right now, and it's sticking around 57, 58. But I think that's the only reason it's losing frames is because, one, I'm streaming, excuse me, and also I'm running it through Visual Studio Code. For some reason, I've noticed slightly worse performance when I'm running it through my code editor. I'm not sure if there's a reason for that or if it's like debugging or something in the background. It is kind of debugging something in the background. I guess it does have the console. So maybe it is processing something while I have it open like this. If you open the exe file of Moonshire, with WinRAR you can see the code. I know, yeah. So I was talking about that earlier, how there is... it's not really well obstructed, but the thing is, even if I made it difficult, even if I made it so that you had to use something beyond WinRAR to extract and decompile the code, people will still find a way to do it. People are going to find a way to do it. No matter what I do, even if I wrote the most robust and encrypted thing, it would not take people very long to do whatever they need to do to get that code out of there. So that's the reason why it's not a super high priority for me, because even if I did compile it through the Lua interpreter, people would just decompile it using the Lua interpreter, and it's the same thing. There's lots of steps I can do to help with it, but yeah, there's all sorts of things that I need to take into consideration with that. Did I learn proportional logic before coding to get more clarity? No, I don't know what proportional logic. Oh, propositional logic. I have not. I don't know what propositional logic is. If that's just like logic class, like a philosophy class, no, you don't need anything like that. Coding is pretty simple. It's just a bunch of if statements. It's just, if the state is greater than 0, do this. Otherwise, we're going to do this, where we set the bar's value to 0, we're going to zoom, we're going to set the timer to 1. It really is just a matter of following statements in order, so I don't think that you need any kind of crazy logic understanding to be able to handle any of this stuff. What biomes do I plan to have in the game? Yeah, that's a good question. I think that I'll have, like, this forest area. I'm not planning to have it raining here, but I'll have, like, a rainy section. Let's see, I have a little bit of a plan of what I'm doing, because I have the winter tiles over on the eastern side, and then the town. The area around the castle, I haven't decided exactly what that's going to look like, but then there's the underground biome, which I was working on with one of my friends. If I go down to the well... Oh! Whoops. Whoops, I broke it. Never mind, we're not going to visit that one. It's too broken right now. UB3 well. Why did that break? Well, let me try that again. That shouldn't have broke like that. Propositional logic is and, or, zor things, but mathematical. Oh, okay, so in where I'm from, that's called, or sorry, at my university, that was called discrete mathematics. And yes, I did take that. That was like one of the first math classes I took as part of my computer science degree. But if I did not take that class, it would have changed nothing. I did not gain any unique, good knowledge from that class that I use today still. Sometimes I have some anecdotal times where I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that from discrete math. But no, you don't need to study anything like that in order to handle it. That class was a lot of proofs, which I hated. That class was a lot of logic, which I liked. But then there was just a lot of like crazy statistics that we had to do that was really challenging. Meanwhile, I'm dealing with harmony patches. Harmony patches, that sounds interesting. Also, like, this is another kind of like tease where there's these dead trees, and the idea is that you'll be able to chop them down and reveal some sort of like fairy ring tree portal. So, by the way, with the music bot, I think that since the music bot doesn't work consistently, I'm going to write my own script. I'm able to do that, and I can write a script that can read what music is playing from VLC, and then it could display the song title, like, I could put it right above my head, like between me and the chat. It could just be a constant, like, a display of what song it is. And that way, it wouldn't need to be delayed between the... I wouldn't have to add the delay, and then since the song's always displayed, people wouldn't have to scroll up in chat to be able to see what song is playing. Proof? I already know it works. Look at it. Proofs are... I like the idea behind proofs. Proofs are also big in geometry. High school geometry is the first time I ever had to do proofs. And what proofs are is just using math, logic, and theorems and principles to prove that something is true. It's very cool. Math wants deduction. I miss math, kind of. I haven't had to do any complex, like, math since I took calculus in college. Since then, I do math for this game a lot, but it's relatively simple. I bet there's some difficult math that I do in the utilities file. But also, like, recently I've been using AI to generate some of these. Like, this draw rounded rectangle, this is a perfect function for an AI to write. And I think I specifically remember asking Copilot to write this because it's very mundane. It's several rectangles in one, followed by several arcs. And I could have written this myself, but this is just so tedious to write because you have to calculate exactly where each of these arcs are going to be placed around each individual corner of the rectangle. And this is where AI encoding is going to get very iffy because AI kind of like robbed me of the opportunity to learn how to do this myself. JK, I love what you're doing. Keep it up. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I worry that a lot of people working with AI encoding are going to do this same sort of thing where they're like, okay, well, I need to draw a rounded rectangle. I'm just going to ask AI to draw a rounded rectangle. And here, watch how cool this is. You can like function and then draw ellipse. How do you spell ellipse? And then I can, yep, there it is. It just does it for you. It's too helpful, but it's also not helpful because it makes mistakes. Like in that case, that code looked fine, but it makes mistakes all the time whenever you generate code like that, and it takes a trained programmer to recognize when there are problems. And then when you're testing this code, it takes a trained programmer to realize when and where the problem occurs. So, like, we're in a really awkward phase of this, like, AI coding mix because people are going to be using it to, like, jumpstart their coding careers, but it's also going to rob them of the opportunity to learn how to code, and it's just going to screw them in the long run. What are we talking about? I'm just going on a rant about AI. Basically, I always go on rants about that. In Love 0.11 version, there's a built-in way to draw rounded rectangles. Oh, cool. That's I didn't realize that. That's neat. I'm eager for the Love 11 because there's a lot of changes in that are relevant to what I'm working on, especially in the physics, because there's a bit of discourse, if you didn't know, there's a bit of discourse with how physics is handled in Love 2D, because I use this library called Winfield, and this project is completely abandoned. It's not updated anymore, and it has bugs. And since it's not updated, it's like it's abandoned software basically. But I still use it in my project because I think it's the most convenient way to work with physics. You aren't using Love 11? No, it's not out yet. Is it? Let me check. Let's check out love2d.org. I'm sorry, I was thinking of Love 12. Excuse me. I was thinking of Love 12. 11.05. I'm sorry. I thought that we were currently on 10. We are currently on 11. That's proof. We're on 11.5. I'm using 11.5. I'm using the latest. I was thinking of Love 12. My mistake. So in Love 12, there's the... what is it? In Love 12, there's the changes to physics, and that's what I was thinking of. Sorry, that was probably very shocking to some people who are familiar with this stuff. That I'm like, I'm not using Love 11. That's so weird. No, I'm using Love 11.5. What is the file get ignore about? Oh, that's a good question. So in the file, let's see, where is it? Get ignore. This is a file that lets you not include every single file to your Git repo. So let me show this. Hopefully I'm logged into GitHub. I am good. So in the Moonshire repo, this is what GitHub. So this is GitHub, and it's showing my Git repo. This is basically every single file that is used for the game is saved and backed up to GitHub. And look, it has 2,176 commits, and it shows every single thing that I've done ever. Look, you can see everything that I did yesterday. I did the proper entrance jump for the bunyip. I did encounter scene blueprints. I added the bunyip in hopping to mobs. Dude, it is actually very, very cool that you can see every single code change that I made to this game on every single day. And like, the other thing is, if you go to my Chalcade profile, it shows you this like chart of all of the check-ins that I've made. And look, it looks like there was like a week-long period in March where I didn't commit anything. But then there's these other periods where it's like I was committing every single day. Oh wait, yeah, and more recently I've been committing every single day. I love GitHub. What was I talking about? I was talking about git ignore. So in this Moonshire repo, the way this works is it just looks at every single file and every single file and folder that exists in this Moonshire folder. So as I'm developing this game, it's literally just a folder on my desktop called Moonshire, and I can add new files to it, and those files will be added to the Git repo automatically. But there are some cases where you might not want every single file from this like Explorer window to be added to the Git repo. Sometimes you'll want to exclude some. Maybe it's like some test files, maybe it's like some log files or some text files, just some junk export code. Sometimes you won't want everything to be uploaded to Git. And in those cases, you would create this file called .gitignore, and everything that you add to this file will not be included to the Git repo the next time you check in. So if there was a specific like log file that you wanted to keep locally in this folder, but you didn't want it to get uploaded to Git, you could configure it in this .gitignore file. So here I included every .dsstore file. What is .dsstore? It is some kind of config file used for Mac. I think it's for Mac zips. I think it's for Mac compressed folders. But whenever I work off of my MacBook, it always creates a .dsstore file, and I hated it. It made me so angry. So I made it so that these .dsstore files can't be included in the Git repo. Hands off to Linus who made Git. Oh, totally. I use Git every single day. It's the most important program ever. If anyone's out there working on games and you don't have Git set up, I have a tutorial on my channel. It's the most recent video that I posted for getting Git set up. It works with any game engine, and it's a very, very good habit to get into, because let's say that I made a few changes today and it broke the code. I could revert any specific change. Like, let's say that show enemy hurt frame on death. Let's say that this change like literally broke the game. I could just revert this change completely to go back to what it was on June 22nd, the day before. And then that change would no longer be in the game, and the game is fixed. Or let's say I'm trying to figure out, like, there's some really complex bug with the enemy behavior. I could go to, let's say, mobanim.lua. Hello. You're able to see all of the changes for a specific file. So if I go back to Moonshire, and let's go to main.lua, you're able to go to history and see every single change that I've made to main.lua. to a specific file. So if I knew that there was a bug in a very specific file, like this cutscene file, let's say that there was a bug in cutscene, but I didn't know what the bug was, and I was having trouble figuring out, like, what did I even change? I could go to MOONSHIRE, I could go to source, and I think it's in levels and cutscene, and then go to history. And now I can see every single change that I made to this cutscene.lua file. And this is like the older one, so these are all changes that I've made, like, well, I still made a lot of changes to the, oh my gosh. These are all changes to this one specific file. And if I was trying to figure out, like, what went wrong, I can go through each of these changes. And in this pull request, or in this commit, in cutscene, all that I did was I added these lines here. It shows you specifically what changed. Super, super helpful. I'm dropping nuggets and I just randomly tuned in. Well, that's awesome. I appreciate that. Thanks for the peer pressure, Kyle. Just committed to main after not having done so for a couple of weeks. That's so awesome. I'm happy to hear that. Can you say how loading works in the back of the loading screen? Oh, yeah. So in the loading screen, when I start the game, you can see it briefly, the loading bar right there. So that's something that I didn't even know you could do in Love 2D for a long time. The way this works in love.load, all of that stuff that's happening during that loading bar is happening before game start. Or actually, no, it's including game start. But if we go to require this game start file, game start, I think it's going to show all the loading things. Yeah, show load screen. So this show load screen is going to render that loading bar. And I think there's a load. Where is this function called? Or set? Here it is. Show load screen. Here we go. So when this show load screen gets called, it's going to do this. This love.graphics.clear, draw loading screen, which is just that bar, and it's going to present. And that's how you are able to display that while the game is loading. And really what it's doing is that while it's loading, it's stuck on one single frame. And whenever you call this present function, it's going to change what the frame is displaying mid-process. And you're able to kind of change things around while the frame is still, like, loading. It's really tricky. I wouldn't say that a loading bar is super necessary because, thankfully, loading stuff into memory in Love 2D is very fast. You'd have to make a super, super big game for you to need a loading bar. And even mine, like, my loading bar, that's very fast. That's really fast. Like, if there wasn't a loading bar there, I think it would be okay. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. But I'm glad I do have the loading bar, because as the game gets bigger, it's going to get bigger. That loading bar will probably take a couple more seconds, and it's nice to have a bar showing you that progress. Got a music playlist? Yes, I had a music bot that would display what song is playing, but it has broken. It has broken. So my new plan is to write my own. I'm going to write a Python script that is actively reading from a text file. Or actually no, I would write a Python script that's actively reading from VLC to see what song is playing. And then once the song changes, it would write to a text file what text needs to display above my head. And then OBS is able to read from that text file and just display what that text is. It's a process that I bought a script a while ago that could do this exact same thing. However, that script is not verified, and I learned last year not to run unverified script on my computer anymore. So I'm just gonna write my own. It's nice seeing progress bars that don't get stuck at 99%. Yeah, totally. I'm with you. How do you remember how to write everything? The only way to remember is practice. But also, I don't. The truth is, I really, really do not. When I'm So things are a little bit different now because AI autocomplete is so good, but like I never remembered this. Love.graphics.set default filter. I don't have that memorized. This, let's see, I'm gonna try and find some other examples. It's any of the love.system.getOS. So I don't have this memorized. I don't remember how to do this. I don't remember love.mouse.newCursor. I genuinely would never remember that. The reason I knew to write this is because I went onto Google and I typed into Google or DuckDuckGo, whatever you're wanting to type. I typed in love2D how to get system operating system. And then when you type that into Google, you get the first result is love.system. And then when you click on this, it shows you the documentation. And when you see the documentation, you can read through all the different functions that you have available. And I saw this love.system.getOS. Click on this, and then there it is. It's a function that gets the current operating system. So I did not have this memorized at all. I had to Google it, and then I figured out that here it is. This is how you get the operating system. And then I copied this, and then I put it into my code. However, the way that I would do this today is I would write a comment that says get current OS, and then it would just write it for me like this, and it would figure it out. So that's the problem, isn't it? Isn't that weird? That today you don't have to learn how to do this. You can just ask the AI to write it itself, because then the AI is going to look up online how to do it and then write it. It's such a weird reality where you used to have to Google how to get the system OS, and then you would find a website that told you. But now, like the software is just built into the whole IDE. It's so crazy. I'm gonna skip this song because it's a little bit too slow. What AI am I using? It's only Cap. It's just the built-in Copilot. I'm not using anything special. I haven't connected it with any external thing. And then you don't learn how to look for the solution when the AI can tell you, especially a problem in bigger systems. Exactly. It's robbing you of the opportunity to solve a problem. I talk about this in lots of cases where the way that I personally learn how to do anything at all, is I come across a challenge and then I overcome the challenge. I learned to code because I wanted to do something in my game and I had to figure out, how do I do that? How do I make a character move to the right? When I press the A key, how do I make it so that the character moves to the left when I press the right key? Like these are very simple questions. You have to Google that question, you have to do some research, you have to read through some documentation, you kind of have to learn about what the context behind this is. Because look, in general, love abstracts away the need to know the current operating system, but there are a few cases where it can be useful, especially in combination with os.execute. Wow, I didn't know that. And the AI would have never told me this because it didn't need to. It just told me this line right here, and I would have never learned something new. That's the problem with AI, is that it's overcoming the challenge for you, and that process is how you learn. I really do think that people who are learning to program should not use AI at all. It really is robbing you of the opportunity to learn. I keep saying that over and over again. How can you ask your Copilot? There's a lot of different ways that you can do it. The way that I like to do it is I'll say function that increases the cursor size. And then once I write that function, then it reads this comment that I just wrote, and then it figures out what I want, and then it wrote it for me. So that's one way to do it. But then you can also highlight it and then modify using Copilot. And then I can say increment by 10 rather than 1. And then there it goes. Actually, it took a little bit of liberties where it rounded it off to the nearest 5, which is okay. So there's lots of ways to utilize it, and man, I really hate showing this off because it's one of those hypocritical things where it's okay for me to use it. It's okay if I do it, but it's not okay if you do it. It's such a hard thing because it's like training wheels where it's like you have to convince a kid you have to take the training wheels off in order for you to get better at riding a bike. Like you'll never get good at riding a bike if you leave the training wheels on all the time. But also, if the training wheels make things easier sometimes, it's okay to put them on once in a while. So it's a really tough conversation. With no coding experience, where would you recommend to start? I want to make a game myself, like an old school RPG. Well, an old school RPG is cool, except for the part where you have to like transition between two different states. Because like an old school RPG, like Final Fantasy IV or 6 or something like that, it's basically like two games in one, right? You have the overworld game experience, and then you have the battle scene game experience. So I would not recommend making a game like that to start, because that's basically like signing up for two games in one, and that's way more difficult. Instead, I would recommend something very simple. Choose one or the other, because there are games where it's just a battle scene. Take a look at like Slay the Spire. Slay the Spire is a game that's entirely battle scenes, or like Inscription. These are like card-based games where it's all in one place, but the battle scene changes, and like there's no overworld exploration, so you can make things a little bit easier. Will I add multiplayer support? Yes, I do plan to add multiplayer support. At the very least, there will be local, but I do have multiplayer online through Steam planned, and it likely will work, but it's not confirmed fully yet. I would just go top down, way cooler, infinitely less complicated. Yeah, I'd say in general that's true. Is that like, I get a lot of people on stream that are saying things like, I want to make a Zelda, or like my dream game is like X. And I'm totally with you there. My dream game is sort of like this one, where it's like a Zelda-like game. I've always wanted to make a Zelda-like game. But the thing about a Zelda-like game is that it's heavily complicated. There are so many pieces here to make this whole thing work. You have a moving character, you have a camera, you have multiple levels, you have enemies with AI, you have environments with different like behaviors, you have all sorts of different controls, and then if you have combat, you have to worry about hitboxes, you have to worry about all sorts of crazy complicated stuff, and then you have like the basic functionality on top of it, the performance. You have to worry about the scaling. You have to worry about the UI. All of this stuff adds up to create a crazy complicated experience, and that's why I never suggest people start with something like this. Instead, if your goal is to make, if your dream game is something like a Zelda game, take one piece of it. Make a game where you can control a character and you can walk around the screen, and that's it. The only game is you can walk, and the goal is to like collect all of the coins in the level, and you get a score based on how quickly you did it. That's what I think everyone's first game should be. If you want to make a game like Final Fantasy, you should strip out the overworld completely and just make a combat scene game. There are games like that. And make it feel good, exactly. Make it really nice. Because the process of making a game good is the hard part. That's what I'm struggling with right now. My game is taking so much time because I'm focused on the polish and making it good. Like, I tell people to make Pong as their first game, because, like, sure, you can say, oh, well, Pong's too easy. I can make Pong in no time. Well, if you can, then do it. And if you can make Pong in a day, then spend another day making it into the best possible version of Pong you could possibly imagine. And if you think you can do that in a day, then you're a game development savant. Making the best possible game of Pong ever would take months. And if you're a brand new game developer, it might take a year. But people don't have that patience. They just want to jump straight into their dream game. And that's the challenge, is that it takes a lot of patience to build up those skills, because think about all those moving pieces I just said. Pong has the moving paddle, and it has the moving ball, and that's it. Compare that to a game like this, where you have the moving character, the moving camera, the moving environment objects, the collisions, the water, you have the cutscenes, you have the enemy AI, you have the explosions, you have the collisions with these things, you have So much stuff. So much stuff. People just get in way over their heads. Yo, it's Shy Guy Mask? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with Shy Guy Mask. I should have been paying attention. But I got into like the zone where I just couldn't pay attention. I was so focused. Oh, Shy Guy Mask. Yeah, hi. I recently got into game dev for the first time through Godot, and your video showcasing and explaining Godot stuff through this game. Really interesting. Cool. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, so my stuff is through Love 2D, which is different, but at the same time, there's a lot of overlap between any of these game engines. Where if you learn one of them, that the skills transfer. Like learning Godot and then switching over to a game engine like this, like sure, they're very different working with a framework where it's all code based and you don't have a full editor, but still, it's still coding and it's still like game development principles. Because, and I say that as someone who did this, like I switched from Game Maker when I was a kid, like all through high school, to using Love 2D, and that's a very big jump because like Game Maker sounds bit, oh yeah, you're right, that sounds super loud. Thank you. And it's a very big jump going from something like Game Maker where it's drag and drop down to something like this where it's all code based and it's kind of complex and tricky. Do I like analytical philosophy? I probably would. The reason I don't say yes immediately is because I took a philosophy class in college, a full semester, and it was one of the worst classes I took because the professor was horrible. I confused you with the other YouTuber. I mean, it's okay because it's really, I talk about Godot a lot. It's really easy for people to get them confused because I talk about Godot all the time because it's one of the most popular engines. And even though it's quite a bit different from Love 2D, it's still like really, really relevant. You're in college right now, any advice? It depends on what your goals are. If your goal is to make indie games like mine, then my advice is to pursue whatever career you want that you're sure you can land a job in and make games on the side. Because it does not require you to go full-time to make indie games. Like, I was making indie games for, like, a decade before I went full-time. And even now, like, I'm only going full-time thanks to the income-earning career that I had prior to this. My tutorials help a lot. I'm also building something. Cool. I'm glad to hear it. So, I kept wanting to show off the cutscene code that I wrote. I wrote a lot of cutscene stuff. So over here in this cutscene 2, I have cutscene 2 versus cutscene 1. And first of all, I think the size difference between these files is noteworthy. So this one has 388, and this one has 136. So much better. So much better. It's huge when I can make the file size or the number of lines, like I cut it in half. So I got the same amount of functionality in this cutscene 2 file compared to this cutscene 1 with half the lines of code. That's what I like about programming, is it's just fun doing that. Coding is like an art where there are genuinely better ways of doing things that are cleaner and more efficient, but it's really challenging to find it. It's really challenging to make things work. And even this file, I know that there are ways I can trim this down, because I have, well, actually no, I'm thinking of something different. I don't need to worry about this because this is handled elsewhere. I don't think. Spawn reward. Yeah, cutscene 2 doesn't need that. What did I do to half it? Let's see. I think a lot of it has to do with making the camera more efficient. So I did this in tandem with the camera rewrite. So I also have, I should show both of them actually. I have cam and cam 2. I did the same thing. Cam 2. Okay, so I rewrote both of these files at the same time. So I have cam and cutscene. These two files work together in order to make those like panning shots. If I open up the game, I'm going to show it one more time so we can understand what I'm talking about. I remember you covering a bit of monogame on your course on Udemy. Did I use other engines as much as Love? I use Love 2D the most, but the reason I talk about monogame is because Love 2D and monogame have a very similar workflow where they're both frameworks and you both have to use like very code-focused approaches to them. So the cutscene that I'm working on is stuff like this, where you walk over here, it spawns that, The camera moves, it spawns an enemy, the camera moves back, it spawns those black bars. So there's a lot of things that go on during that. And then after I beat these enemies, it's going to do it again. Cutscene, camera pan, spawn reward, camera pan back, black bars removed. So that whole process, I tried to automate using a very clever system. Before, I had camera where it had these different like focus values, but it wasn't very clear. It was so awkward, whereas like a bunch of if statements that said, if we're in player dialogue, then do this, player item get, do this. It worked, but it was so hacky having these if statements just manually override the camera values in these different cutscene scenarios. And then cutscene was the same way, where if I scroll down, it's a lot of these like if statements. If we're doing this like look at this ID, then it uses a timer to switch states and manually focus, and it's so hacky, where I just copy and paste these sections. Yeah, all of these if sections, these are all copied basically from each other, where they behave the same way. So the goal with this cutscene rewrite is all of this code here. This is how I trimmed it down. I was able to get rid of all of this code, because all of this code is just trying to explain how the cutscene should behave in different scenarios. But I changed it so that you don't need to include that stuff at all. Instead, you can pass in a list of very easy to define stages, and I do this in this encounter file. So every encounter, blueprint, here it is. Every encounter, this is how you create one of those cutscenes, is you pass in an object like this. So before, you would create a cutscene by writing a big, so bad. It's so bad. I converted all of this big section of code into this highlighted section. And it's a lot easier to understand. It's a ordered list of what happens. The cutscene halts, then it focuses on itself, then it pings itself, and then it goes back. That's all that it needs to define. It is so clear and so linear and so easy. And then in order for me to define the outro, again, it's so easy. It's only 3 lines to define the outro, where again, it halts, it pings itself, and then it goes back. Do I like set theory, like axioms? Well, so I did set theory. I had a, what is it? Computer, man, I wish I knew what it was. It was one of my computer science classes in college. It was computational logistics, I think. It was all set theory, where you like, we had to like draw those graphs where with the bubbles connecting with each other, with the different brackets to define if it's inclusive, or the ors or ands and stuff. What do I use for the pixel art? I'm starting on pixel art and want some advice on what to use. Currently, you use Pixel. Pixel sounds perfectly fine. Really, you can use any art program at all. If you used Paint, like MS Paint, that would be perfectly fine. I use this program called Sprite. So I use a program called Sprite. It is very convenient. It has every feature I want. I really love working with Sprite. It allows you to have multiple frames, and you can define animations. Everything's built in very, very nicely in Sprite. But Sprite does cost money if you buy the built version. You could compile it yourself using the open source version, or you could use LibreSprite. LibreSprite is another option. That's an open source version that is compiled that you could download, and it's free. You should make better names for your variables. Oh, I don't agree at all. My variable names are amazing. Like, I take that personally. My variable names are so good, and I will challenge you on that. If there's a specific variable name that you saw that you don't like, then let me know. I will take a look at it, and we can talk about why I named it that way. Because variable names is a challenging process, and everyone goes through it differently. But I take a lot of pride in the variable names that I choose, because I really, really like them. I think why people believe game dev is easy is because of devlogs. Watching devlogs makes it seem so easy. Like, the devlog will just say, so I added the player. Yeah, you're right. It does obfuscate the whole process into making it seem like a fun, easy process. It's so simple. this is a very specific example, but like I compare it to like gameplay videos. Like, have you ever watched like a playthrough of an RPG? Like I watched some RuneScape videos, and there's these progress videos where like they snap between different parts of the game, and they cut out all the boring stuff. And when I watch those videos, it makes me think, oh man, I really want to play that game, because it does this supercut of all these fun aspects of the game, and I forget about, oh well, they cut out all the boring stuff. They cut out the grind. They cut out all the walking you have to do. What about my game release? I mean, there's still a long ways to go. I worked for a long time with Scratch. Do you think Scratch is a good way to start coding? Yes, definitely. You can make, if you can make programs with something, then you can do it. So Scratch is like one of those drag and drop sort of programming systems, and some people will like argue that you should move on to text coding, but the thing is, the drag and drop stuff still uses the same fundamentals and principles that regular coding does. So if you learn how to do if statements in Scratch, then whenever you do decide to move on to a text-based language like this, it's going to make a lot more sense, because you're going to read if n.id is equal to woods. You'll remember, oh, well, this is the exact same thing as Scratch, when in Scratch you have if statements as well, or you have conditionals or something like that. I say that again from experience, because I switched from Game Maker to Love2D when I was like in high school or in college, and Game Maker is very similar to Scratch. Game Maker is drag and drop coding, and there are if statements in Game Maker as well. They're not called if statements. I think they're called like conditionals or tests. But I realized once I started coding that it's the same thing. There's not much of a difference. It is it's just more approachable, because like using building blocks to build your program feels a lot more intuitive, or a lot more approachable, compared to seeing like this big function where you have like the brackets and the strings, and you have like, oh, what does this even mean? What does return nil even mean? It can be overwhelming. Dude, why aren't I coding in Fortran? Very good question. Probably because I like living. Why did I choose Lua instead of writing it with SDL? The reason I chose Lua is because I tried out a whole bunch of different game frameworks, and I liked Love2D the most. Since I liked Love2D the most, I decided to stick with it. And that's the sole reason. I wouldn't say I chose Love2D because of Lua. I definitely didn't. But also, if I didn't like using Lua, then I probably wouldn't like using Love2D, and therefore I would switch to a different engine. Assembly, my beloved. Oh my, that sounds scary. I took a semester of assembly. Actually, it wasn't even a full semester. I took a computer architecture class in college, and there was a section on assembly coding, which we had to do. We had to code assembly on paper, and it was very, very difficult. How about electrical waves? I mean, binary. Binary is just electrical waves, isn't it? Manually solder the chips together. Man, you guys know it. That's like what you're talking about is one of those common things where people who want to make their own games, or they're solo developers, it's very tempting to say, I'm going to make every single aspect of this game. I'm going to do all of the art, all of the programming, all of the music, all of the sound effects. Every single aspect of this game is going to be created by me. And that was a mentality that I myself had to get over at some point. Because as long as you say that, and I think that it's good to have that mentality at first, because when you are creating smaller games and you do everything yourself, you gain a lot of skills. That is exactly how I learned all these skills, is by doing everything myself. But at some point, I realized that if I want this game to be the best it can possibly be, while also getting it done in a reasonable amount of time, I need to utilize other people's work. And that includes open source assets, that includes paying for asset packs, that includes getting other artists involved, that includes paying people for their work, that includes just utilizing things that are already created. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. It's utilizing code libraries. Like, I'm using plenty of libraries up here. These are open source projects that other people made that help make coding in Love2D a lot more like reasonable. If I didn't have these libraries, I'd have to write it all myself, and it would just take a lot longer. if using other people's work saves you time, then I think that you should utilize it. At the same time, it is good to build up those skills. I do think that you guys should make games all on your own so that you can get a grasp of what coding is like, what working on like artwork and pixel art or 3D modeling or sound effects or music. I think it's great to make a game entirely on your own. But if your goal is like your dream game or some commercial success, if your goal is to publish a game on Steam and sell it for money, and you're still on that mindset of doing it completely on your own, you definitely need to get over that, because you're competing against people who don't have that mindset. Your game that was made entirely 100% on your own is competing against other games that have teams of people behind them, that have like people like commission other artists, that utilize pre-made assets. And if your game, like people aren't going to care that you made it entirely on your own. They're just going to care, is the game good? If you can use other people's work to make your game good, make it better, while still like abiding by the licenses, of course, then I think that's a good idea to utilize that. Using libchange the way you code for simple dialogue logic. I'm not sure exactly what you mean. Like an RPG, you need to spec your build into a few stats and join other party members that back your weak spots. An all-rounder build doesn't work unless you're over-leveled. That is so cool. That is such a cool way of describing it. That is so cool. Because that's completely true. Is that, imagine a team of people creating a game. You have one person who spent the last 5 years coding. You have another person who spent the last 5 years doing art. And then you have the last person who spent the last 5 years doing sound and music. And then the three of them spend a year making a game. How does that game compare to the one person who spent 5 years doing coding, art, and music all at once? It's like they are a jack of all trades and a master of none, and therefore the final product isn't going to be as high quality as the one that involved collaboration from 3 masters. And the only way to compete is if you yourself are a master of all of them, which I myself am not a master of all of them. I'm very good at coding, that's what my career was, but when it comes to pixel art, I'm only kind of good. I can do some pixel art and I can make really good edits. I have a good eye for this, but making sprites completely from scratch on their own, like I struggle with that. It's tough. And so I ask for help. I use other people's work. I pay for other people's assets, and I make sure that they fit my style, and I add them to the game. And in the end, the final product is better as a result for that. I reach the final product quicker, and it is done with higher quality. Butterfly says, I'm good at nothing. Oh, come on. So if you really feel that way, then pick one aspect of game development that interests you the most and try it. If you really feel like you aren't good at anything and you want to get into game development, then say, I'm going to try out coding. And then you're going to download one of the game engines, you're going to try making Pong, and you're going to build up your coding skills. Or if the pixel art side seems more interesting, or the 3D modeling, or the sound design, the music, take your first step somewhere. And the goal is for you to say, I am good at something. I'm bringing something to the table. That is the first step. And if you're a solo developer, the goal is that you would be able to do all of those steps to some capacity, but still you'll need to fill in the gaps with other people. There are so many better artists than me, and it would be foolish for me to force my artwork on this game, because then the final product wouldn't be as good, and it would take longer to complete. And make small games and prototypes first. That's the step that a lot of people skip, is that there's a phase where you are learning still, where you have to like get a feel for the foundation. I always talk about painters. If you were painting a painting and it's your very first painting ever, will that painting turn out good or will it be ugly? I'm sorry to say, but if it's your very first painting, it's going to be ugly. The only way to make good paintings is to make a bunch of ugly paintings first, and then they start to get a little bit better over time. It's the exact same thing with game development. You have to make some bad games first, and then they start to look pretty good. This is like my 19th game, because I made so many little ones that I never posted. And I made a bunch of them that I did post. I posted Necrozone and I posted Cavern. And then I made a whole bunch of games before that. I never posted any of my Game Maker games. There's so much stuff that you have to do in order to build up these skills. My first painting was the Mona Lisa, I swear. Wow, you are talented. I'm jealous. That doesn't mean you shouldn't challenge yourself. If you really want to bite the silicon, that's cool, then go for it. But don't turn yourself on the soldering iron. Yeah, so you're right. It's important to challenge yourself, and overcoming those challenges is how you learn. If I never tried to make a Zelda-like game, then I would have never really figured out how to do it. There are points when you have to take that step. But I'd say when it comes to game developers starting out, people have a tendency to over-challenge themselves than they do to under-challenge themselves. It's a better mistake to under-challenge yourself at first than it is to over-challenge yourself at first. If it's your first year of working on game development, you should definitely be under-challenging yourself so that you can get your goals completed, at least get something done. But if you are just over-challenging yourself from the very start, you're just going to overwhelm yourself constantly. You're constantly going to hit brick walls and never finish anything. Allfather, hi, welcome in. Allfather, that reminds me that I'm going to take a drink of water. What happened to the bird game? It actually never had a name. I always just called it the bird game. The reason I stopped working on the bird game is just because I felt like fundamentally the controls felt clunky, and I needed to basically restart if I want to do that type of game. So in order to make a platformer that's good and successful, it has to have very good, tight controls, and every aspect of it needs to feel very good. I compare it to Mario 64. When Mario 64 was being developed, they put Mario in a big, blank, empty room and just had him jump around, and they tweaked the controls slightly for like a year before they made any levels. They made sure that Mario's jumping and movement felt perfect before they started making content for the game. And that's what I needed to do for the bird game. I was starting to make content for it before it really felt right. And so I had to stop. So I would love to revisit the bird game at some point. The concept behind it is kind of cool. The idea behind the bird game is that it's a platformer, but you can fly. It's kind of like Kirby. Kirby can fly, but the problem with Kirby is that flying isn't meant to be the primary way that you move. Flying is meant to be like a backup option for when you can't jump, because you move really slowly while you're flying. There's two sunflowers right in the same room. Kyle, am I a Death Stranding truther? I'm afraid I am not a Death Stranding truther. I have not played Death Stranding, and I do not plan to, unfortunately. I know that Death Stranding 2 is getting some pretty good reviews, and a lot of people have come around on Death Stranding 1. But when I watch the gameplay and I hear about what people are saying about Death Stranding, it doesn't seem like the type of game that I would enjoy. I don't like, one, I'm not a fan of open world games, and it's an open world game. 2, the tone is very dark, somber, and freaky. That's not my vibe. 3, the storytelling is very abstract, and I don't like abstract storytelling. I like stories that I can understand. That sounds like an idiot take, but I think that the idiot take is needing stories that are so complex that you can't even understand them, and you have to like watch YouTube videos afterwards in order for it to make sense. I'd rather enjoy the story while I'm playing the game. Call me crazy. But, you know, that's a very harsh take. I didn't actually play it, is the thing. I should play Death Stranding so I can have credence behind that opinion. It's kind of, you know, isn't it lame that I'm like bashing this game when I didn't even play it? The reason why I'm saying those negative things is because I have a feeling that I wouldn't like it because I have a tendency to dislike open world games, and I have a tendency to dislike stories that are really weird. So that's kind of all that it is. Have I tried the new FNAF? I've actually never played any FNAF. Well, no, I played FNAF 1. I played FNAF 1 when it came out, but besides that, I haven't played any of them. The storytelling is abstract at first, but in the end, Kojima over-explains a lot. Really? I didn't realize that. See, like, that's the thing is, like, Death Stranding is such a big milestone game, and Kojima is such a genius that I really should play it to give it a chance and see if his style and his take on those things is actually good. because it's possible that I will really like it. It reminds me of, do you guys remember the video game Donkey video that came out when Death Stranding came out? Donkey made a video where he's like, this game is horrible. And he's just playing the game and it's like making fun of the game the whole time because it's a very weird game. And then he made a follow-up video like a year later where he's like, I played it again and it clicked with me. And now he likes it. And it's like, I've totally been there. I get that. I felt that way with Hamilton, where I saw the play Hamilton, the musical, and I didn't really like it at first. But then when I listened to the soundtrack a second time, I loved it, where it really grew on me the second time. And I bet that there's lots of games like that too. So whenever I say something negative about a game that people don't like, I really try to contextualize it around personal preferences, because I can see why someone would like Death Stranding because of the tone and because of the way Kojima does games. But I just don't think that I would like it very much. That's how I felt about Pokemon Black. Interesting, yeah, that makes sense. Have I played Clair Obscur? Yes, I have. Clair Obscur is one of my new favorites. I love Clair Obscur so much. I added a few songs from the soundtrack to my playlist, actually. Man, I really am not doing much at all. The whole point of the stream was I wanted to show the cutscene code, but now I'm just kind of chatting, so hopefully that's okay with everyone that I'm just chatting with chat. This is my favorite thing to do, by the way. Have I played Undertale? Yep, I played Undertale, and I played Deltarune chapters 1 through 4. Loved it. Love them all. I love Undertale the most. Actually, no. I think I love Deltarune chapter 1 and 2 the most. I really like those games a lot. Why did I stop using Game Maker? I stopped using Game Maker because I used Game Maker in... I started when I was in 4th grade. So my dad bought me this book that had Game Maker, like a Game Maker CD, and I was in 4th grade when I started. So I used Game Maker from like childhood through high school. And then when I was in high school, I started taking a coding class. It was like a Visual Basic class and then a Java class. And when I was in those classes, I decided, okay, since I'm starting to learn regular coding, I want to move from Game Maker. Is Game Maker that old? Yes, it is. And it's funny, it was old when I started using it. So I started using Game Maker in 2008. And it was Game Maker 7 at the time. So there was Game Maker 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 prior to Game Maker 7. So in 2008, it was already very old. And here we are, like almost 20 years after that, and it's still going strong. Game Maker is very, very good and very long-standing, and I love Game Maker. I think that people should give it a chance. Yep, I'm 29. I was talking about something and then I got sidetracked, but you know, that's how it always goes, I guess. I had Xenoblade music on the background, so Death Stranding's large world and overcomplicated plot shouldn't be that intimidating. Very, very good point. And it's funny you say that because I would say Xenoblade Chronicles is a very, very good comparison, because on paper, I don't think I would like Xenoblade Chronicles either, because I don't like open worlds. And it's funny because Xenoblade Chronicles kind of plays almost like an MMO, where it's a very huge open world and you just talk to NPCs to get quests and they tell you to go kill something. It feels like an MMO. And when I played Xenoblade Chronicles, I feel like that's something that I wouldn't have liked, but when I played it, I loved it. And the story did mesh with me. I liked the story. I wouldn't say the story is abstract, though. A game like Returnal on PS5 is very abstract, but Xenoblade Chronicles is complicated. I wouldn't call it abstract. Something like Final Fantasy VII is abstract, but even that one I like. I like. There are some abstract stories that I do like. It's all personal preferences and stuff. I respect everyone's opinions on these things because I get why people like things that I don't like. How do I move the anchor point of the rotation of the grass to their bottom? That's a very good question. So every sprite has an origin point. Every sprite has an origin point. Let me go to Sprite Manager. This isn't a good example. Let's go to the planes. Okay, so this is the exact code for the grass, and the way it's drawn from the bottom is these parameters here. These parameters here. These define the offset of the sprite, or the origin. I think that the best way for me to explain this is with a quick MS Paint drawing. Sorry, it's very, very bright. Let me make it dark. Okay. So let's say that we had a piece of grass, and the grass sprite looked like this. Okay? That's our grass sprite. The thing about any sprite, any image that gets drawn into the game, is that it's actually a rectangle. Is that every image is actually a rectangle because it's a PNG image. There's transparency, and then there's the image. So when you draw the sprite, by default, there's an origin point. And by default in Love 2D, the origin point is in the upper left corner. So in Love 2D, when you draw a sprite, it's going to take the image, take the position that you're drawing it at, and then draw the sprite like this. So if this was position like 10, 3, that's the position of this point, then the sprite would get drawn here. But then if I decided to draw another instance of this grass over at this point, and the position of this grass is, let's say, 30, 10, then same sort of thing. It's just going to draw this at there from the corner, from the upper left corner. That's the point, 30-10. So when you're drawing these sprites, you have the option to change the origin point from the upper left corner to some other point on the image. You can change it from being in the middle, or from being in the upper left. You could change it to instead being in the dead center, for example. So a lot of sprites in my game have the origin set to the center of the sprite. So then if the grass, if the grass was drawn, oh jeez, I'm so bad at MS Paint. If the grass was drawn with that new origin, it would look like this. So the point is here in the middle, but, you know, the image itself is offset. The origin for the sprite is different. So to answer your question on how do I make it rotate from the bottom, is you set the origin point to the bottom. And the origin point in love.graphics.draw is just one of the parameters. If I go to the page for this, there we go. Love.graphics.draw has this OX and OY parameter. So you set these parameters here, OX and OY, origin offset, x-axis, and origin offset y-axis. By default, it's 0, 0, aka the upper left corner of the image. But you could change it to, say, width divided by 2, height divided by 2, and that would be the dead center of the image. You could set it to width divided by 2, height, and that would be the dead bottom of the image. So what I would want to do for the grass is draw the grass, but then set the origin point to not 0, 0, not half width, half height, half width, full height, which is the very bottom. So then the image, the sprite would get drawn like that. So that's how you do sprite drawing in Love 2D. is you can set the anchor point or the origin point or the offset. It has lots of different names. It calls it the origin offset in Love 2D, but this is standard stuff in any engine. It gives a whole new meaning to rotation grass. Yeah, totally. Why did I choose to do Lua with Love 2D and not a game engine? Well, just because I tried them all out. Because all of these game frameworks and all these, by the way, you can just download them and try them. So I downloaded and tried out Unity and Unreal Engine. Godot wasn't out at the time, but I tried out a whole bunch of different ones. And when I tried out Love 2D, something about it really clicked with me, where I just got it. Something about it felt right. So I just tried making games with it. Again, I started with a very simple game to start. I made a clone of Atari Breakout, which I've shown on stream before, where if you go to Google, you can search for Atari Breakout, and then it will play a Breakout game. But my internet's going real, or my internet's slow at the moment. Hope it comes back. I think my internet's dropping. I'm so sorry about that. Uh-oh, I think my internet's completely down. I think my internet completely dropped. Yeah, I'm not seeing the chat anymore. Okay. I think that there's a problem with the stream. So sorry about that. I think that the internet's coming back. Google's trying to load. Oh man, I'm so sorry, guys. Okay, we'll give it a second. We'll give it a second. I'm gonna keep working. I know it'll come back. It'll be back. I promise. Oh, there's still some people here. Okay, well, cool. Yeah, like Google.com isn't even loading. Like there's actually a problem. Unless it's like Google specifically. That'd be really funny if it was Google specifically. I'm getting some chat messages, so it can't be completely down. And chat is not helping by going nuts. I think that they're helping just fine. Okay, it's definitely the internet is definitely working. It has to be. So I'm so sorry, guys. Well, I'm gonna take it easy for like 5 minutes. The internet is working because I'm like here and I'm able to go between pages. Look at that. Like, so the internet is working. It's just very slow at the moment. Yeah, it's like it's dropping frames like crazy. But look, I'm trying to go to google.com and it's not working. Plot twist, YouTube is at fault for everyone. For me, it's fine to some cam lag. Well, I'm glad that it's not that bad for you. But man, for me, I can't even use the internet right now. Like something is really, really wrong. Look, finally, Google loaded. Oh, don't show my search history. Was there anything weird on there? Okay, yeah, there wasn't anything weird. The weirdest thing I searched for was Chris Chan images. Oh my god, I'm never making that mistake again. Okay, we're gonna try this again. Atari Breakout. Well, the internet's back? Okay, yeah, it feels like it's back now. Thankfully I don't search weird things, but I did it did show my search history just now, and thankfully I didn't search anything weird. Is it buffering for anyone else? It's gonna be better. It looks like the internet was down for a moment, but it seems to be fixed now. Leaked, yeah. You can see some of my leaked searches. Okay, so I'm gonna play. This is the game that I remade, by the way. So when I started with Love 2D, I made a version of this game. Oh, you're not supposed to hit that. Okay. I hope I use incognito. I mean, sometimes. See, it's funny, like, incognito kind of meant something different to me when I was a web developer, because when you're working on websites, it's really common that you'll want to use incognito because you want to, like, clear your cache. You want to view your site as if it was viewed by someone who wasn't already browsing. So, I know some people think of incognito as, like, this nefarious thing, but for me, I see incognito as, like, it's strictly a tool to clear your cache, because websites behave weirdly when they have cookies or something like that already. How do you do a Pong roguelite? Ooh, that's cool. A roguelite, that's even better. A Pong roguelite would be really fun, because really even a game like this is fun to play. I just like enjoy this. I don't understand this upgrade I have, though, where it just, like, targets a specific one. Ah, that's nice. Weirdly enough, websites can still track you if you use incognito. Well, that's the thing, is that I never really saw incognito as, like, you can't be tracked, because in order for a website to display content on your web browser, like, they need to know who you are or where you are. Like, they don't need to know who you are, but they need to know that someone's requesting that request. They need to know the browser is requesting something. So I never really. There was that lawsuit, though. So, like, if you felt that way, you're not the only one that felt that way. There was a lawsuit a few years ago with Google where the way that they were presenting incognito was misleading, and I think they lost a lawsuit too. There was some kind of thing where incognito was claimed to, or some people were misled into thinking that incognito was fully not being tracked, but that's not true. Websites still know when people using incognito visit their sites. And I understood that, but a lot of people didn't. A lot of people were under the impression that it was like you weren't tracked. But you are tracked. All it does is it simulates your browser as if there wasn't any browsing cache. Damn, this game got juice. That's what I mean, is that, like, look how simple this is, but yet you could spend so much time working on a Pong clone like this and make it amazing. But people don't want to do that. People just want to jump straight into their dragon-based MMO. Oh my gosh, this game is so fun. Oh no, I kind of threw, though. If I had to learn to code again, how would I do it? I would first vow not to use AI at all. First of all, I would start by making games. I would still make games to learn how to code. You don't need to know how to code to make games. I would either learn one of the main game engines like Unity or Godot, or I would pick up GameMaker again. Like, really, I think that if I was starting from scratch, I would probably use GameMaker again. I would probably do the same thing that I did before, because I really, really like GameMaker. Science-based dragon MMO, yeah, that's one of my favorite posts ever. Where do you get these sound effects? Well, I mean, this isn't my game, by the way. This is Google's game. Google made this. I'm just showing this because this is the kind of game that I want people to make. The Love 2D game that I made was very similar to this. I don't think I have it anymore. I wish I did. I do have it. I do have it. I do have it. It's on my old Mac. It's on my old Mac, so I can go pull out my old Mac at some point and see if I can get that code off, because that would be way better for me to show. Like, this was my it'd be so cool to show my first actual Love 2D game, because it was like this but uglier and not as cool, not nearly as many features. This is an amazing version of this game. Oh no! Ah, I threw. Is Flappy Bird a good first game? Yeah, Flappy Bird is an amazing first game. I would say Flappy Bird is a little more well, I don't know. The complexity with a game like this. If you were trying to make a game like this as your first game, the tricky part is figuring how to make these, make everything collide. Because it is hard to figure out, when this ball is moving in one direction, how do you make it move in the correct next direction once it hits something? When it hits the paddle, it uses the position on the paddle to determine what angle to use. But when it hits one of these blocks, it just bounces off using physics, or like using like a standard angle calculation. Not physics, really. It's like just an angle calculation. And that's the tricky part. Whereas the tricky part with Flappy Bird is that there's a camera that follows like a moving level, and also there's gravity. You have to calculate the gravity movement. And those are its own sets of challenges. So both of those games are good first games. I would say that a game like this, like Pong, is a bit better for like approachability. But if Flappy Bird feels like a game that you would enjoy making and that you feel like you would be able to do it, then I think that would be a fine one, a fine first one. Have I decided if you're going to do an Indie Friday stream? I think I'm going to stick with just Mondays. I don't think I'm going to be doing any streams other than Mondays for quite a while, just because I need to get this new demo out. Once the new demo is out, once 0.05, or sorry, once 0.5 is out, then I will consider doing more streams. But until then, like just Monday streams, it's working out pretty well. How do I make music for Moonshire? I use this program called FL Studio, and I utilize a lot of pre-made, what are they called? Presets from this software called Omnisphere. So my answer is I use FL Studio and Omnisphere to make most of my music, but I started using a program called LMMS. It's free, and it can do like 95% of the stuff that FL Studio can do. So if I were starting with music again, I would not buy FL Studio. I would get LMMS for free, and then I would get a whole bunch of free virtual instruments, VSTs, or free synths. There's a lot of free like virtual sounds, like assets and free virtual instruments and things that you can use to make music. And there's some really good ones that can make your production sound a lot nicer. Where I would just start with some free ones and do some research into some paid ones. And once it feels like FL Studio would be useful for you, then you could go ahead and buy that. Or another one, there's lots of really, really good ones. Lots of ones specifically for Mac. There's also Reaper. Reaper is also free. And there's a paid version, but you don't really need the paid version. The free version gets everything done. So there's lots of options with music. Oh, no. LMMS is better. I bet at this point, LMMS does literally everything that you could possibly need a music production software to do. I bet that it does everything that I need. Because really, for me, FL Studio is good just because like it's pretty solid software, but LMMS is also solid. And the real value I get out of FL Studio is the presets and the effects and tools that it has built in. But there are other versions of that stuff that you can get for free online. So you could build a version of LMMS that does literally everything that FL Studio could do. I'm pretty confident about that. Maybe not. I bet that there's some like unique features that FL Studio has that make it worth paying for. But I mentioned Omnisphere earlier. Omnisphere is this really, really expensive set of synths. It's like a synthesizer that's really, really well made and really expensive. And a couple of years ago, I decided to pull the bullet and bite the bullet and finally buy it. And I love it. I really, really love it. What engine do I recommend? Really, any engine that you like. My recommendation is always to download all of them. Download, download Love2D. Is there a... Oh, that game has music. That game has music this whole time. I had no idea. That game had music, and I didn't even realize. All the engines are free. Download Udemy, or not Udemy, Unity, Unreal Engine. You can try out Love2D. You can try out Monogame, try out Game Maker. I definitely recommend Game Maker. I would say to start, I would download Game Maker, Godot, Unity, and Unreal Engine. Those are some really, really popular ones. I think Game Maker is the one I tend to go back to recommending to people who are just starting out. When making Pong, how would you simulate the enemy bot moving on its own? I would simulate that by just simply trying to not necessarily keep it in line with the ball, but make it so that it moves towards the X position of the ball if it was vertical. Donation from Jojo. Thank you for the Lua tutorials. I'm making a mod for Balacho. I want to know if you've ever made mods before, and is Aseprite a good program? Thank you. Thank you so much for the donation. That's so kind of you. And although I've never really made mods before, I am working on mod support for my own game. So the way that, like, I was talking about cutscenes, how the way cutscenes were before is you would program a cutscene by looking like this, is I would have to actually code this whole big section in order to make a cutscene work. But instead, I changed it so that it supports a format that looks more like... where is it? That looks more like this. So I went from this, all of this code, down to this. And it's like, how is this related to mod support? With mod support, it's pretty similar, where you're trying to make it as approachable as possible so that regular people, even people who are not programmers, can create their own content doing stuff like this. Also, you asked if Aseprite is a good program. Yes. I love Aseprite. I use it every single day. It's my favorite art program. It's amazing. I really, really love Aseprite. But mod support is something I care a lot about, and it like, this is a weird example, like the cutscenes thing. But if someone was modding like a level and it had a cutscene, they could just make a little section like this, and it's really easy to understand this compared to this. It's like modding this. That's barely counts as mod support. Same with the enemies, like the slime. This is similar to what mod support would be like too. All of the stuff required for the slime to operate is in this file. It's all of the animations, which you're just defining what the animations are. You're defining how it enters the battlefield with a jump. You're defining what attack it has. In this case, it only has one attack. It's a tackle. And then these are just like little properties, like the width and height, what shadow it uses, and how much health it has. So this is similar to mod support too. Hydrate, thank you. McFamily, I love that name. I've just got my hands on Aseprite, and it's kind of hard for me. I'm a person with low vision, but I will get used to it. I wonder if there are settings or mods or like changes that you can make to the interface to make it better for low vision. Because I sympathize with you. When I'm making this game, I'm really considerate of, especially like color blindness, because it's really tempting to make puzzles and environments and signals in your games that are color based. For example, I had some people telling me, like, they really wish that I had different colored hearts, like a line of hearts where they had different colors. Like Zelda. In Zelda, you have the red hearts and you have the yellow hearts. But the problem with that is that some people can't distinguish between colors very well. And if the only difference is a color difference, then suddenly you have an accessibility issue where people can't comprehend every detail about the game, and then it ruins things for some people. Would mod support just be dragging and dropping a Lua file? It would be putting a Lua file in a specific folder. So I can show this too. I have mod support for levels as well. So in Moonshire, so whoop. This is what the file system for Moonshire looks like. You have all of the different files, like this is save data for file 1. These are all the save data for file 1. But then once mod support becomes more integrated, more involved, and more supported, there's going to be folders like this. I have a folder called Worlds. This is where mod support for custom levels will go. When you want to make a custom level, it's going to put the custom level into this Worlds folder, and you can see like these are different custom levels that I made. I have one called Kyle June 17th. I have one called Test. So if you want to make a new level, and like your new level was called Mushroom Kingdom, you could make a new folder and call Mushroom-Kingdom. And then there you go. Now all I need to do is just add some tiles and some maps to this Mushroom Kingdom folder, and now I have a custom world that I can go explore. And I can see it in game. I can test this out. If I open up this menu, I can go to World, and look, it shows that Mushroom Kingdom folder that I just created. And if I click on this, it's now going to start loading the levels from that custom world. But they're like, I don't think I have it set up properly, so it crashes. But that's how this all works. So custom levels, kind of supported. That's how it's going to work. So does that mean Moonshire is going to be like SMBX? What is Super Mario Bros. X? I'm not familiar with that. But the idea is that, yeah, people are going to be able to make custom levels and custom make whatever they want, really, because the goal is I want it to be really easy for me to make levels. I want it to be very easy for me to make these new enemies. And the best way for it to be easier for me is if I make it easier for everyone. So if it's easier for everyone, that means it's also easier for me. So it's a win-win-win. Am I fighting code right now? I wouldn't say I'm fighting code. I'm pretty good at coding. Not really an error, but it looks weird. Super Monkey Ball? So many SMBs. Oh, good point. It's a fan made like All Stars that has level editor. Oh, cool. Yeah. See, I assumed it was some kind of Super Mario Bros. Like Kaizo editor or like mod editor, because I know that there's lots of those. Those were big like when I was in high school. I never really used them though. I really should have. What are some easy games to start out with making on GameMaker? I always recommend Pong or like Space Invaders. Someone said Flappy Bird. That's a good one. There's a lot of options, but the whole point of starting games is that you can get through a whole project and overcome the challenges that come with it. Because like it's really tempting to jump in and start making a game that's really complex, kind of like mine. The style of game like mine is something that a lot of people are going for, but there's a lot of moving parts to this. I really do recommend starting with something really easy. If your goal is a game like mine, I would say make a game where you just have one character in one room, and the goal is to go throughout the whole room and collect all the coins. It's just a movement-based game where you collect all the coins, and then that's it. And then that's the whole game. The reason why you can do that is because it cuts out all the complexity. You can get to the end of the project, but you're still overcoming some of the challenges. Like, making a character move around a level is challenging. It's tough. And making a character collect coins, you have to have collision, you have to have a score counting system. These are fundamental things that are really, really good to get out of the way in a starter game. That's why people always recommend that. Do I do all my cutscenes via coding, or do I use Codebase and then CSV? So I was kind of showing this a second ago, where the way cutscenes were is, like before this weekend. Over the weekend, I rewrote all of this cutscene in camera code. Before, it would be custom coded, where every cutscene I would create this big if statement and just manually make the cutscene behave in a specific way at each different state. But I changed it, so now you don't need to do any of this. Instead, you just pass in an object that looks like this. So it's kind of like in between. It's like, it's not coding, but it's not a CSV. Like you said CSV. See, that's very simple. This is somewhere in between, where you are telling it, like, this cutscene is going to first, it's going to halt and zoom in, then it's going to focus on the encounter itself, then it's going to ping itself to like spawn the correct enemies, and then it's going to return back to the player. So like this very short section replaces this big if statement right here. So I don't really know how to really explain that any further, I guess. What engine am I using? This is called Love 2D. I think I should add more shadows to the bottom of the wall tiles. Yes, I should. Let me show you. So I completely agree with you, and I have taken the steps to start that. So let me zoom in and make this really, really easy to see. Okay. The reason why I haven't put them in is because I need to adjust the tiles still to make them look a little bit better. But I created a layer called shadows, and then I created a brush called shadows as well. So now I can like draw in these shadows underneath the elevation. So how about that? I think that's exactly what you were talking about, right? Is that there's a bit more depth with these elevated cliffs where you can like compare this side versus like these two sides. The one on the left has no shadows, and the one on the right does have shadows. It's a very small detail. Very, very small amount of shadows and shading, but it is enough to make a difference. Is this also Love 2D? So Love 2D is just a coding library. What you're seeing here is a level editor called Tiled. So in Love 2D, I'm going to import this tiled map into the Love 2D game and then render all of it. So once I want to put shadows in the game, the reason I haven't done this yet is because I think I want to change these shadows to be a little bit more round. So it's hard to see, but like the shadows are kind of square shaped right now. And I think I want to change this so that they're more rounded. But the thing is, in order to do that, I have to get a little bit creative with how the brush is going to brush these shadows onto the ground. It's going to be a little bit tricky. I'll probably still put these shadows in like by default, because these shadows right now, it does look better than without the shadows. But I do still want to make it a little bit better. Are your shadows part of the tile or added on? That's a good question. I didn't actually show that. The shadows are entirely separate. Entirely separate. If I can like hide all of this stuff here, hide all the details and the... So this is what the shadows look like. If I grab the shadow brush, this is what the shadows look like. It's literally a layer of just slightly darker shading. And then when I unhide the elevation, it just draws right underneath of it. Now the reason why I do this is because, look, the shadow bleeds into the next tile. I can't have the shadow baked onto the cliff tile set because the cliff tile set goes directly to the edge of the tile. The shadow goes into the next surrounding tiles. That's why it can't be baked directly on. It needs to be separate if I want to have it formatted this way. I could format it so that the shadow is baked on and then the cliff is kind of like edged in so that there's more like internal room. But the way I did it is better for like solid collisions, because now it goes right up to the edge of the tile, and then the shadows extend further out. Why when my game draw the hitbox, the frame rate drops a bit? Well, I mean, when you draw the hitbox, it depends. So in my game, if I have a lot of hitboxes on screen at once and I draw hitboxes, it can get a little bit laggy too. But in a room like this room here doesn't have too many. It has a bunch. But since there's not too many, the frame rate doesn't drop. But if I put a bunch of colliders in this room, tons of hitboxes, tons of colliders, and they were everywhere, then it would start to lag. Because drawing all this stuff does require processing power, and if you have thousands of objects and polygons to draw, it's going to start to lag. That makes sense to me. Does Moonshire have night and day? Not a night and day cycle, but there are different biomes where some are more daytime theme. Like this is more of a nighttime theme, whereas this is more of a daytime theme. But since the game is like Moonshire, I think like canonically the whole game takes place at night. But since the moon is so big, you know, like maybe the moon is so big that it makes the land feel like it's daytime. You don't need pixel perfect collisions. Personally, I don't think so. I mean, look at the hitboxes for these walls. If I draw the way the walls get drawn on. Actually, they're already drawn. So look at these walls. It's a little bit hard to see, but the collision for the wall, it extends out a little bit. There is some dead space here where it's counting a collision when the pixels themselves have some empty space. Why do I do that? Because the collision of a rectangle is a lot simpler than the collision of this complex pixel shape. When you're calculating collisions, it is helpful when you use simple shapes. Look at the hitboxes of a fighting game. The hitboxes on their fists aren't like precisionally designed around their knuckle shape. It's like a big floating like bubble that surrounds their fist, because that's what feels good. And in this game, like, you don't need that level of precision because it's bad for processing and it's not necessary. Like, if I did actually move this wall so that it edged in this slight corner slightly, would that make the game better? In my opinion, it would not make the game better, but it would make the game require more processing. It would require more processing to handle that complex shape of this wall. So that's why I tend to stick with really simple shapes and rectangles, because it makes things a little bit easier to work with, and it makes the collisions like less intense. Is GameMaker good for large-scale projects? Oh, totally. Yeah, it's totally good. Like, I mean, if it's good enough for Undertale was made with GameMaker. If Undertale is not ambitious enough, like if that game didn't make enough money for you, then no, I guess you'll have to use something different. But my point is that if a game like Undertale can succeed by using GameMaker, literally any game can. Because Undertale has a lot of complexity to it and a lot of stuff going on. So GameMaker is a really, really good engine. I like to recommend it to most people, especially people starting out, because it's a good one. And also keep in mind that, especially if you're starting out, your first game is not going to be a commercial success. I said this earlier in the stream. If you were learning how to paint, is your first painting going to be good, or is it going to be ugly? It's going to be ugly. And it's the same with your first game. Your first game is going to be ugly. It's going to be bad. It's going to be a bad first game, which is why you should do a small, easy first game. Your first game should be a small, like, simple Pong clone, because you can get through that pretty quickly, and then you can move on to your next game. Which libs do I use? Oh, let me see. I use a bunch of them. I use Animate for the animations. I use Flux for tweens. I use Hump for the camera and for the vectors. I don't use any of the other ones, just camera and vector. Lip Service is one that I wrote. I'll release that eventually. Simple Tiled Implementation is for importing tiled maps into Love2D and then rendering them. Winfield is for collisions and physics. Baton is for input. It's an input processing library. Bitzer is for sending data across the network. That's going to be used for multiplayer when I try to implement that. Draft. I don't know what this is. Oh, this is for drawing complex shapes. So I use this for stars. Star. Yeah, draft star. So in my game, there's a few places where I draw a star. Like here, when I hover over this word, it has these little stars, and that comes from the draft library. It's using this star. What else do I got? I got show. This is for saving and data, or it's for saving data to files. Sock is for sending data. So I don't remember. Maybe I don't use Bitzer. T-Sound is for, it's a sound effects library, and UTF-8 string is for rendering complex strings that include weird characters, or like non-English characters. So these are all made by other people, yes. In this libraries folder, all of this code is written by someone else, except for this one called Lip Service. This is a library that I wrote. I made this one myself. But all these other ones is made by other people. And really, Love2D is its own kind of library. Love2D is kind of like a library that sits above all these other ones, and it's controlling everything. I don't know why but I made a good player movement in Love2D, but then I tried adding dash ability and I'm really struggling. Well, I mean, that's a really good practice session, is that when you change currently existing code to do something else, a lot of the times it is going to do something unexpected. It is hard to figure that out. That's part of the process, is understanding the code on a fundamental level to the point where you can edit it to do new things. Nice work, even if it's not all you. Oh, totally. Like that's you will be hard pressed to find a project of any kind where 100% of the code is written by the developer. I know we all like to talk about how Balatro was made by one developer, but it wasn't. Balatro was developed by one guy, but he used Love2D, which is developed by a huge team of people. He utilized a bunch of open source libraries, and I don't know what his stance on assets and sound effects were, but I have to imagine that he used some paid assets. I don't know. I'll have to ask him about that, I guess. But to say that it was solely 100% made by him is not true. And same with my game. My game is not solo developed by me. I am the sole developer on this project, but I'm using a lot of stuff that was made by other people, a lot of assets made by other people, a lot of code made by other people. The engine itself is built using Love2D, which was made by other people. And I'm developing it using a computer that was made by someone else. I'm running Windows, which I didn't write Windows. I didn't write Windows, so should I have to rewrite my own operating system to build the game system with? I'm being facetious, obviously. I'm just joking. But I'm trying to get the point across that there's different lines. If you're at the point where you feel like you have to make everything yourself, I sympathize with that because I used to feel that way. But eventually you should reach the point where it's okay to open things up, where you collaborate with people, you pay other people for their work, you utilize open source projects and assets, and it'll speed things up. Because if it turns out that collaborating with other people yields a better final product, then that's probably the better option. If your goal is to have the best possible game that you can make, sometimes that might mean asking for help with certain things. You might be a jack of all trades, but a master of none. That means that the masters will be able to surpass you. Like, I'm really good at coding, but I'm only kind of good at art. There are other artists that can make way better artwork than me. And if I want this game to be the best it can possibly be, it's in my best interest to, like, ask them for help, to help make some of the best artwork possible. The OS just runs Moonshire, but some of us are broke. No, I'm serious. I'm with you. I'm with you. So if you're broke, that's an extra reason why pursuing a career that has an income is very important. Because if you have an income, you can pay your bills and you can pay someone to help you with this work. Or you can do rev sharing. You can find a friend. You can find someone that can collaborate with you, and then you can go in on it together. I'm with you that money is definitely a factor. That's why the topic of income and game development is really, really talked about a lot on the stream. A lot, because like that's a really big player, is that if you don't have money, it's hard to get the things done that you need to get done. And I'm with you, but that's why this is the long game. Like, your dream game is not going to happen right now. Right now, you are building up your skills with whatever you got. If you have no money, then yeah, solo develop your game and build up your skills until you do have money. If you're young, someday you will be older and you will be able to have a job, and then you'll be able to pay for things. And if I know that's productive, because even adults have bills and families and things get expensive. That's why I'm so cautious about recommending people to go full-time game development, because it really doesn't make that much money. I want people to be in a comfortable financial position so that they can pay all their bills, take care of their family, and have enough left over so that they can make their games. Because if you're making your game entirely on your own because you have no money, it's just gonna, I mean, that's fine. What do you think about Kickstarter? Kickstarter is a great option. That's totally a great option. Is that if you also don't have money but you have a project started, you could use Kickstarter to crowdfund. I think that's perfectly fine. That's why I'm starting easy with a mod. I know it isn't easy. Totally. I'm with you there. Starting with mods is a great idea, because mods will get you kind of like into that ecosystem, get you kind of acquainted with the development process. And then eventually you'll want to move on to like developing a custom project And the geez, I'm stuttering like crazy. I'm so sorry. The context that you gained from working on the mods will be really helpful during that development process. I think I'm going to go ahead and end the stream for today. We are at 2 hours, and I really, really appreciate all you joining me. It was a great stream, except for that short downtime where we lost connection. But thank you so much to everyone for joining me today. It was a very, very good stream. I will be back again next week for yet another Moonshire Monday. And hopefully the stream will not drop next time. I will, again, do some more research to make things a little bit better and a little bit more stable. But thank you again to all of the regulars and all the people that are showing up to the stream. I think people like Jojo and Butterfly, or actually it's Butter Iffy, and Wolf and Hana, Rescue Squad, DJ Menzi, Quinn Cube, Adele, Krish, Penguin. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you again next week. Bye, everyone.